See this okay? Is that good enough, or do you want to try and figure something out? Okay, so we're going to talk about some review on classes and stuff, and I've got a few people that messaged me about some different things that they want covered here to make sure that we get covered. One of them was just about like the test 2 constructor stuff for that class question, and then the one is about how to use values from a form to create objects from a class. Is there anyone else that has any questions that they want to make sure they get answered in this review? I mean, this is for you guys, and we just really want to make sure that you guys understand object-oriented programming and how classes and objects work and all that. Do you guys have any?
I'm just reviewing like has a, and then like which values get inherited from a child class, or like which values get passed from the child class to the parent class. If that makes sense.
So inheritance stuff. Okay, inheritance. I don't know if that's right or not. Okay, yeah, I'm planning on going over some of that stuff too, so that'll be great. Okay, I'm gonna start by going over some of the test 2 constructor stuff, just to kind of get that out of the way, show like what I might have done when just looking at this prompt, and yeah, is that cool with you guys for now? And then we'll get into more stuff, some of the stuff that I've been thinking of that could be really helpful for a better understanding of these things. Okay, so this is let's open a new one. Put this over here. Okay, so over here on the left is going to be, okay, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this. We're going to be looking at the question from the test, and I'm just going to be writing it over here, kind of how I would do it. And hopefully, I'm not going to like go over every single thing, yeah?
Sorry, there's like a light above the screen. Is there any way to get that off?
Davis, could you there's one way to get those lights there on and everything else off, and that's like the best way to do it. And I never know how to do it. There, that one. Is that better? Okay. Okay, so let's play ball. So we're gonna create a team class. So really quick, I'm gonna go through like what this really means and what's going on behind the scenes later. But let's just go through how to do this. So class team, that's pretty straightforward. This class will have attributes of team name, wins, losses, and coach. It says coach name. I think that he's really looking for a coach object there. I'm sure a lot of you saw that there. But when I'm first thinking of this, I'm like, okay, first off, I know that he's gone over a bunch of stuff with ECMA 7 and ECMA 6 as to like which browsers do what. My philosophy is always do a constructor. Don't put things in the just in front of the constructor. That way you don't have to worry about it. It's gonna work if you have everything in a constructor. And so you don't have to worry about it, and you don't even have to think about it. So just put it in a constructor. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And so we're going to create that. Now it's going to have the attributes team name, wins, losses, and it's going to have a coach. So when I think about having a constructor for a class, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, so sorry if it's kind of repetitive, but it's good to know. Is I think of what is the minimum, what are the minimum attributes that I need for this thing. So when I think of a team, and I say Davis and I create a team, and we're gonna play baseball. Do you play baseball?
I have before.
I haven't. Yeah. And so we're gonna create this baseball team, but when we first create the team, does it have wins? Like, have we won anything? No. We haven't won anything. Have we lost anything? No. So my thought is those things shouldn't necessarily be passed into the constructor at this point. They're not parameters that are vital for creating this team object. So in my constructor, I'm not going to include those. However, I do know that when we're creating a team, we need a team name. So I'm going to pass that in because I know that that's like the first thing that we need. And we're also going to need a coach. And this coach is just going to be a coach object. Now, I think that the way that he wanted it was like you passing it in the first and last names of the coach, but I think that's kind of dumb, so I'm not going to do that. I'll show you how I would do it, like how I would pass that coach in later. So right off the bat, I know that this .team name is going to be my team name. This .coach is going to be the coach that I'm passing in, the coach object that I'm passing in. And since I know I need wins and losses, well, when I'm first creating it, I know my wins are going to be 0. I've never played anything. I know my losses are also going to be 0. So there I have this constructor. It's, if I call team, parenthesis, team name, comma, coach, parenthesis, it's going to create a team object. Does that make sense?
So you don't have to define wins and losses before, like.
You do not.
Because this not wins, it'll automatically
Yeah.
create it.
Yep. This creates the attribute for you when you instantiate an object from the team class, which that sounds scary, but it's not that bad. Okay, let's move on. The coach is an object from the baseball coach class. Okay. Create a baseball team class. Okay, let's start doing that. Baseball team. This class inherits from the team class and have attributes of team batting average and pitching average. Okay, so I know this is going to extend my team, which makes sense. It's like we don't want to recreate the wheel. Extends, sorry. Now, I know that because I'm creating a class, I need a constructor. Like I just said, it makes sense just to put everything in a constructor, all your attributes, so that you don't have to worry about whether it's Firefox or Chrome or Safari or whatever. Now, I know right off the bat, when I'm extending another class, when I'm extending a child class from a parent class, I need to have every parameter that's in the parent class constructor as parameters in my child class constructor. Did that make sense? So I look at my constructor here, my team, my parent class, and I say, oh, this one has team, name, and coach. I better be passing those into every child class that extends this parent class. So I'm going to have team name and coach. I need to make sure that I have both of those as parameters. Go ahead.
What if you don't? Because aren't those typically already created since it extends the team class?
So they're not created yet. They're created once I call super, right? So I call my super. That's saying, hey, whatever your parent is, we're just going to make this function that says, hey, go find the parent, pass in the parameters that it needs for its constructor. Now, technically, you don't need to pass in anything. JavaScript will handle it. JavaScript will be like, oh, well, you didn't pass in team name. I'm just going to say it's undefined, and we're going to live with it, and then you're going to run into errors later on in your code. We don't want errors. We want to have thorough, robust code. So we're going to say that we're going to pass in team name and coach so that those can get passed directly to super. Let me talk about this super relationship really quick. So if later on in my code I was like, hey, I want a new const my team equals new team, right? And I'm going to name it my team, and it's just pretend we've created a coach object already. Okay, this is how I'd create an object of class team, and I'm going to call it my team, right? And what I'm doing is I'm calling this constructor, which has the parameters that I specified earlier. What's happening is if I change this to baseball team, it has to accept those parameters, but if those, and then immediately it's just calling, you can think of this as saying team, where it's just calling whatever its parent is. It's just, we don't want to have to write in team for every time we're extending a class. They just made something called super so that it's like encapsulates all extensions, all inheritance. It's just, it makes it easier for us so that we don't have to think about, oh, what did I call my parent class so that I can call that constructor. That's all super is. It's just calling the constructor for the parent class. Sorry if I took a little bit of time on that, but I want to make sure everyone understands that concept because that's really important with object-oriented programming. Does anyone have any questions or still kind of iffy about that?
Could you explain one more time the difference between like the constructor team name and coach and the super team name and coach?
So this one and this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just look and see what other attributes it has. So this is attributes of batting average and pitching average. So this constructor, team name and coach, say that I also for some reason I wanted to have my batting average, so batting average and pitching average in here, which I wouldn't do this normally, personally. Then what this is saying is these parameters I'm gonna pass straight up to my parent class constructor. But maybe these other ones, I'm gonna say my batting average equals the batting average, and the pitching average equals the pitching average. Does that make sense?
So like when you call or when you create like a baseball team object,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna pass it in a team name and coach, and then we'll send that up to the parent and then back down to the child.
It never comes back down to the child. We're gonna get to what happens with creating, like what actually happens with creating an object, because especially in JavaScript, that's so important. I think it helps so much. We're gonna get to that, okay? And I think that's one thing that people are kind of confused about, and it'll make sense, I think, more when I show what an object actually looks like. But as far as this, like this is just an example saying that if I were to pass more parameters in, they don't have to get passed up to the parent constructor because the parent constructor never accepts them. These ones are only pertaining to the baseball team class, not to a team class in general. Because what I could do is I could say, well, I'm going to make a hockey team, right? Extends team as well. But a hockey team doesn't have a batting average and a pitching average. I don't want those as parameters for my hockey team constructor. But I do still want my team name and my coach because that's what the team class accepts. And so that's kind of how you have to think about it. Like, and it just takes getting used to, and it just takes time, but yeah. Anyway, any other questions? Go for it.
I know this is a different way to write stuff, but usually on the videos he does like right after baseball team, he'll write like batting average, pitching average.
Like right in here?
Yeah, right in there.
I say don't do it.
Yeah, you're saying that. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. You instead just put that information in the constructor and then it's all the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like that's in the newer versions of JavaScript that flies, but in older browsers it doesn't fly yet. And so just putting it in the constructor like protects us. It's good to know so that when that is accepted, you can use it. But for now, just put in your constructor and then you don't have to worry about browser. Okay.
So I don't really understand why you using team name and coach twice. Sorry.
For like here to here.
Is it passing from the constructor to the super?
Yeah, so like it's just like a normal function. When I pass in a parameter, whatever I call it right here, I refer to it later on by the same way. So they're all the same. Like I could if I call this one just like team and my coach or something like that, then down here I'd have to call them team and my coach because that's how I'm referring to them. Up here, however, since I'm accepting them and in this constructor, this function, calling them by those names, then I'd have to call them by those names.
The baseball team class doesn't have the wins and losses attributes the same way that it has team name and coach.
Nope.
Like from the parent class. And so do you have to specify anything in the baseball team for those wins and losses attributes?
That they exist, like whether or not they exist, or
Yeah.
no. So what it's doing is baseball team inherits all attributes and methods from the team class. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever we create up here, it's down here, like it exists, but we don't have to specify it. That's what's great about this, is I can say, like for baseball, maybe I have all these other little additional things that I want to add to my team class. But for hockey, I want to add completely different things. But they both are going to have team name, coach, wins, and losses. So now I'm not rewriting code. I'm not rewriting wins and losses in every single different kind of team that I created, like team object that I created or team class. It's just in that one parent class, and then it can extend to all the others. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. Could you have your constructor in your team class? Could that take 3 parameters and the super in the baseball team class just have 2? Does that make sense?
So like if this had another one,
Yeah.
so like,
I don't think.
and then just press 2. You could do that. I mean, like especially you can have default parameters, so you can say like, if they don't pass this thing in, set it equal to 0. Okay. I don't think we've talked about that, and I wouldn't worry about that too much. We're not going to get into that. But JavaScript is, like I said before, it's just going to be like, oh, you didn't pass it to me. I guess I won't use it. I'll just say it's undefined. At least that's what I'm pretty sure what it'll do.
Can you tell me again, like, why don't we put the wins and losses in the parameter of the parent class constructor?
Because when you're first creating it, the wins and losses are going to, like when you first create a team, wins and losses are going to be 0, right? So at least to me, it's like I can just set them down here. I don't need to worry about passing them in. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, unless you're creating a team after you've already like played like 3 games or something like that, which doesn't really make sense to me. A lot of this is just what makes most sense in real life. And then we're writing it in code. Yeah.
So what do you do once you start trying to pass in wins and losses then? Is it
So if you do want to like later want to refactor, that would be going in and you'd have to say wins, losses. Like if you're changing how you're getting data, is that kind of what you're asking? Or are you saying? Okay, so if you just like say I want to say like add win, then what I would do is something like this. So then I can like I've created my team object or whatever down here, right? And then like I can go my team dot add win. Can you see that?
okay?
So now it's saying, okay, go call the function on that object, which was created in the class, and just increment wins by 1.
So you would first just call the team class with those 2 attributes, team name and coach, and then you might later call a method that puts in wins and losses.
Yeah, or like set wins and losses. So then I can set them later on. That's probably what I would do personally. And there's so many different ways to do it. It really depends on. These are things that you talk about with your teams, especially when you're like creating something brand new. Is like, how is the data going to get put into like our database? How are we trying to display this data? How are we trying to save it? Like, what makes most sense for that situation? So if it makes more sense to have wins and losses as things that gets passed in, do it. But in this situation, I don't think it makes sense. Was there a question over here? Okay. I'm going to move on. Let me just delete that. Okay, is this helpful for everyone? Like, I just want to make sure that... okay, so we've created this, and then, like, honestly, I would just put these equal to 0, the batting and pitching averages here, because let me move this. This is there. Because they're going to be 0 when the baseball team is first created, just like the wins and losses. So that's what I would do. Now, let's get into person. Person we've seen before, right? Like, he's shown plenty of examples of this. So we're going to have first name and last name because you can't have a person without those, which isn't really true in real life necessarily, but it's true in this program. Okay, go for it.
So I had a question about what you just said. So if you set batting average and pitching average to 0,
Mhm.
couldn't you get rid of them from the constructor? Or sorry,
Like, oh, are you asking about this?
because you had those in this one. Or I guess you already got rid of them.
I had them in there. I could set a default one. I wouldn't worry about that right now.
It's just in my head.
Yeah. You don't, well, that's one nice thing about JavaScript is you don't need to pass in everything that's going to be set in your constructor. You can just set it straight in there. So person, that makes sense, right? You're just creating a person. Okay, let's say baseball coach, which inherits. So class baseball coach extends person. It has the attributes of career wins and career losses and win-loss percentage. So, okay, I'm going to make a constructor for this baseball coach. Do I need to pass in anything? And if I do, what do I need to pass in into the constructor? first and last name. First name, last name. And this is just so that we can pass it up to the super, or to the parent constructor. Okay. This one, attributes of career, wins, losses, and win-loss percentage. Honestly, this is kind of the same thing for me. Like, the only time that I would think is, like, I guess you could pass this in if it was like already a previous baseball coach or someone that had already like been coaching. That would make sense. Does that make sense to you guys actually? Would it be better to put that as like things that you pass in?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, let's do that then. So we're gonna pass those in. Wins, losses. I'm not gonna pass in win-loss percentage though, because if we have wins and losses, we can calculate that. And so I'd rather calculate it myself than have the risk of, especially because it's gonna be like some decimal thing, than someone like putting it in wrong. So first and last name are already taken care of up in the parent. So now I can say this dot wins equals wins, this dot losses equals losses, and then this dot win-loss percentage equals wins divided by wins plus losses. Does that make sense how and why I did that?
Why did you not just put a method for this dot win-loss percentage? Can you do that with a new constructor?
Yeah, I probably would. I would probably make like calc wins losses somewhere in here. My thought is like this one, it's right when it comes in. I might as well just do it. Like, I guess I could put something like this calc wins and losses at that point, and have something like this. Actually, I would just do this. Nope, actually, no, I'm going to stand by what I did earlier and do that. That way we're setting the variable right away, the attribute, sorry. Because in here, in the function, the method that I would create, I would probably do something like this. Oops. So I would be in calc wins losses, I would be setting this dot win loss percentage. In my constructor, I like to see what I'm doing right there personally. It's personal preference a lot of times. Sometimes at companies they'll have like standard practices for how they want things done. And so you adhere to those standard practices. This could be one thing. If they'd rather see just a function being called right there, then you do the function being called right there. But as far as this, it's like kind of like personal preference.
So is the this dot used in the whole class? Because I thought you just used it in the constructor.
So if I want to refer to the attribute, I have to use this dot to refer to the attribute, no matter where I am in the class. Does that make sense? If I was accepting something like wins and losses as parameters here, then like I don't necessarily have to, I wouldn't use them there. But with calc wins and losses, I'm assuming that I already set my wins and losses and I'm just recalculating. So I want to use the wins and losses that are assigned as the attributes for the object that has been created. Does that make sense?
So you need that last line of constructor and the method, or just one or the other?
I would probably do both. That's personal preference, what you'd want to do. That's what's cool about this, is you can do it how you want. As long as you make sure it works. Okay, any other questions? Is this making sense? Just quiet, so I'm...
What do you go?
I would probably call this later on. So like maybe I'm not going to create everything, but like maybe I just want to recalculate it. So this calculates it the very first time everything gets created. But say we went and we played a game or two or something and I want to recalculate my wins and losses, I would call this. So a baseball player, batting average and home runs. Okay. Baseball player. And this is pretty much going to be the same. I mean, we're going to have first name, last name. This has batting average and home runs. So batting average, home runs, because if we assume that they've already played. So we do the same thing. We make our super. We call our super first. We can then we can set our batting average, and we can set the home runs. Basically the same as the one that we just did, just different attribute names. Now I do want to show. I'm not going to go through everything else here. That I think this is just like the method, and that's just creating a function, which I think you guys understand that by now. Is that okay if I don't go over that? I want to get into some more stuff. But I do want to show like the way that I look at this with the creating the team class and having a coach. What makes more sense to me is to say something like const my coach, just give it a random name, equals new baseball coach. I'll just do my name. No, let's do Greg Anderson. Okay. So I'm creating the coach. To me, this makes more sense. I'm like, he's a thing that already exists. And then I'm passing it into my team. Well, I'm passing in a baseball team as my coach object, which passes into the super function, which then goes and constructs from the team class. And that's just the coach object. You could pass in the first name and last name and do something like new baseball coach in here. I personally don't like that as much, just because I'm like, if I'm creating a team, I'm not creating a baseball coach. Create the baseball coach first and pass it in. That's me. But like you can, and then because then you're also passing in like the coach first name and the coach last name as parameters into the team, and I'm like, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the actual team. It only has things to do with the coach. So personal preference, once again. Any questions on the test 2 constructor classes, all that kind of stuff? Okay, cool. And I just really want to quickly go over, just identify the has-a, is-a relationships. So whenever we see extends, we want to think this is an is-a relationship. Baseball team is a team. It's kind of like a square is a rectangle, right? A square has all of the attributes that a rectangle has, but it doesn't reverse. A rectangle, well, I guess a rectangle is a square. No, rectangle can not every rectangle is a square, but every square is a rectangle. So a baseball team is a team, but not every team is a baseball team, right? So that is a relationship. Same with the person here. A has a relationship is like in the team, we have the team has a coach, which is a baseball coach. I think that there would also be like, we could say this dot players equals an array, and then it would be the players, each of those in there, so they would all be baseball team or baseball players. Does that make sense? Actually, I'd probably call this roster, but whatever.
Wait, this dot coach.
Uh-huh.
How is that a baseball coach exactly? Because they don't connect at all.
So down here, I say my coach.
Right. Oh, right there.
Yep. And then that's how I pass it in. What's tough with JavaScript is you can't say, hey, I'm expecting that to be a coach. Like there's no validation there coming in. But
Can you go back down?
yeah,
I
sorry.
didn't see that second.
Down here.
You created the-
Is this good or further?
the mighty, okay.
Okay. Does this make sense, everyone? Okay.
Hey Peter, are you gonna like step through the console a little bit now and like
The what?
step through the console, like showing the like how the object actually looks?
I was gonna go over one more example and kind of use that one.
Okay.
And I was gonna actually like write it out.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think that'll help me see like
Yeah.
how an object is within an object.
I want to go over one more example. Go for
That
it.
was kind of my question was, could you like show a little bit of like objects within?
What it looks like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like create an object in the class, or would you just I don't know exactly how exactly.
Yeah. Let me do this next example. I wanted to go through one more example of this same similar kind of thing, and then get into that, just to make sure that this is like firm in everyone's minds. Okay. Okay, if everyone's cool on that, I'm going to, and I think I've shown some of you this kind of example, but I think it's really helpful, especially with like thinking about classes. So my wife took this class, or she didn't take this class, she took CS 142, and she struggled so hard with classes, and she like hated me for it. She got so mad at me, and because she's like, "You're not helping me." I'm like, "I don't know how to help you. You don't understand it." And one of the best things that really helped her was talking about classes in terms of blueprints. So with a blueprint for like a building or a house, they lay it out like everything exactly what it's going to look like before they build it. And so that's exactly what a class is doing. With a class, all that we're saying is, here's the blueprint for this object that I want to create. There's like, when you have a blueprint, it's just laid out. There's no walls, there's no doors, there's nothing like that. All it is a piece of paper saying what we're expecting this thing to look like. That's all classes. And so we're going to do buildings and houses to kind of show this one. So let's start with a building, because we're going to have a building a house that inherits from a building, and each building has an owner. Okay, so we're going to kind of build out what this kind of class structure will look out, and then I'm going to show you what the actual object would look like when it's created. So let's say class building. So right off the bat, we're going to create a constructor. And in my mind, if you have a building, you can't really have a building. This is just like, yeah, there are situations and everything, but one of my first things I think of is like a building has an address, right? Like if you're going anywhere and like you're going to a certain address. So I'm going to say it has to have an address. It also has to have an owner. And for now, that's all I'm going to put. And we can argue that there's more things that it could take in and everything, but I'm like, those are two things that like pretty much every building has. So we're going to say this dot address equals address, and this dot owner equals owner. Pretty simple, nothing too complicated about that. I just want to make a note that this is a string, and that this is going to be a person class that I'm going to create. Okay. And this kind of helps me know what the different attributes, like what they're supposed to be when they come in. So now that we have this, I'm going to actually create the person class quick. Actually, I'm just going to copy the person class from over here. Okay. Because, I mean, first name, last name, that's all we really need. Now if we have a house, does everyone kind of understand what's going on with this so far? Now if we have a house, extends building. So what do I need to put in my constructor? Address and owner.
When you put in the person, why did you put it above your building class?
I could have put it below, but I kind of like just the flow of how I think about it. I'm like, well, you can't have a building without an owner, and so you have to have the owner first, like a person, before you have, like, it doesn't really matter. Okay. I just, flow-wise, it makes sense to me. Sec. Write this down. Oh, there's some things I forgot. We'll add those later. Just kind of show how you could refactor things. And with a house, what's going to be like separates a house from like any normal building, I think one thing is bedrooms. and maybe another one is like the number of bathrooms. Like this is just all hypothetical. And also it's residents, like who lives in this house. So now what we can do is we can say, okay, so we know our super is going to go up, and it's going to be an address and an owner. And then the rest of these attributes, or the rest of these parameters that we get passed in, are going to just be the attributes that we want as part of this house. So bedrooms equals bedrooms, and I'm expecting this to be an int. This dot bathrooms equals bathrooms, and I'm expecting this to be another int. And then this dot residence, I'm expecting to be, just going to pass in residence. I'm expecting to be an array of person objects.
You think the bathrooms and floats is kind of like, that's typically how we do it, right? The half bathrooms.
You could say float. Let me get on this one thing really quick. In JavaScript, he talks about float and int all the time. It's all just number in JavaScript. That is a good point though, to like, because you got like a half bath or something like that. Just so you know, it doesn't deal with ints versus floats in JavaScript. It's all just number, and you can parse int. All that's saying is, hey, we're not going to include anything after a decimal. If you parse float, it's like, we're going to include things after a decimal. And it just evaluates that for you. But it's all just of type number in JavaScript. Okay. Does this kind of make sense, like how this is all structured and everything? Okay. So let's just, let's create, I'm going to just call it me, okay? So I'm going to create a person class, new person, Peter Garrow, right? So this is going to be, I'm going to be the owner. I'm going to create two others. It's just my wife and my daughter. Janessa equals new person, just so they can be residents of a house kind of thing. So they can kind of see what's going on there. If I can spell my name right. Come on. Cora Garrow. Okay. This is kind of an example to show how I would come up with something like this. So I would say something like my residence equals my array of me, Janessa, and Cora. Okay, so this is now an array of person objects, right? We can see this clearly that like we created each of those variables correspond to different person objects. So now what I can do is I can create my house. I have someone that's going to be the owner, that's going to be me, and I have a list of residents, an array of residents that can be the people that live in it. So I can say const my house equals new house. So it says that we need an address. We'll just say 123 Main Street or something like that. The owner is going to be me. The bedrooms, let's just say it's like 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and the residence is going to be my array of residents. Residents. Okay. Now, yeah, let's go ahead and save this. What should we call it? Just call it index. Okay, now that we created this, we can kind of look and see what, like, let's go ahead and look and see what this object is going to look like. So we can copy all this actually, and let's just open a browser and go to inspect. I'm going to move mine over if I can. Okay, and come to our console. What's great about JavaScript, oh my gosh, this one. What's great about JavaScript is you can just paste all that in, press enter, and, oh, I did something wrong. As long as you don't do anything wrong, building. Okay, so now my house should be an object. Now, the whole reason to have a class, to have this blueprint, is to create an object in JavaScript. And I think that's one of the things that will help really connect what is happening with like the extends and the inheritance and everything. Because if we look at this object, this house object, we can see that it has an address. It has bathrooms. It has bedrooms. It also has an owner, which is of type person. It has residents. Here, actually, let me zoom in. Sorry. Which are also of type person, and their first names and last names and everything like that. But we can see here very clearly that there's nothing that says that address is coming from building and that owner is coming from building. All that it's creating is this one object that has a whole bunch of key value pairs. Now, when we talked about local storage, we kind of talked about key value pairs a little bit. Do you guys remember that? The data dictionary. So you can call it a data dictionary. It's the same thing as a JavaScript object. JavaScript objects are key value pairs. So, sorry, does anyone have any questions right now? I know this is getting into a little bit more abstract stuff.
What did you change real quick after the error?
Oh, building, I forgot to capitalize it. That's all that I changed at least.
If you're running into issues, I can like come help and just sit here.
Like, is there anyone that's just like, I'm lost, I want to go back a few steps, or is everyone good? Okay, everyone understanding this? Is this helpful so far with what's going on? Okay. So this is the object that's created. Let's go back into Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna actually like write out what this looks like in JSON. We talked about, do you guys remember what JSON is? What is it? JavaScript object notation. So it's just how we write JavaScript objects. JavaScript objects, all they are key value pairings. They're data dictionaries. It's just what's the key and then here's the value. So when we create this, it's saying, oh, okay, I'm going to go and take all the things that you passed in, and I'm going to go find the keys and assign them to the values that you told me to. And where does that happen? That happens in your classes. So let's start with the person. So with me, this is what's actually going on in the background. It's saying, okay, you passed in Peter. So okay, that's going to be first name. So I'm going to take first name, and that is going to be my key. And my value that I'm going to give it is Peter. And then you gave me last name. Okay, so the last name that you gave me is Garrow. So that's going to be the value for last name. There's nothing that says that this object is of type person right here. So like it's smart enough to know later on like, oh, this is of type person, but it's just still an object. That's all it is. And so this is what it's looking like just in the background. It doesn't look like this. When you actually create the thing, it looks like this. Okay. So I go and I can create all of those. So all of these person objects. Then we get to my house. Okay, so it's like, okay, well, we're going to create a house object. So you need an address. Oh, we better go up to super first because that's the first thing you're doing. So you gave an address. So the first attribute is address. And we gave that 123 Main Street. Right? Okay, the next thing that you gave it was the owner. So it goes up and it's like, okay, what do I do with owner? Owner was a person. So I know that the key is going to be owner. The value, though, we said that me is just equal to this object, right? So what it does is just says, okay, I'm going to copy that and paste that right in there. So this key corresponds to this object as a value. I can press enter. I don't know why these are there. Oh, it's just because ignore the little red squigglies. It's just like, wait, what are you doing? I don't know what you're doing here. I'm just showing like how it looks. Okay, so we've gotten through those two parameters in the constructor. And then it says, okay, I'm on to bedrooms now. So I take my bedrooms, my key, stick that in, and you said it was 3. I don't put quotes around it because I'm told just like I just passed in the number 3. It doesn't need quotes there. Then it says, okay, the bathrooms is the next one. So we're going to pass in bathrooms. And that's going to be those 2. And then the last thing was residence. So it says, okay, this is residence. And this, it sees, oh, this is actually just an array. So it creates an array here. And it's just passing in exactly what you told it to. Which a person object we said already looks like this. And so when you have an array of objects, all that's happening is, sorry, I'm just going to type this out quick. So let's just say it's just us 2. So it's an array of 2-person objects, and this is how it looks behind the scenes. So it's taking the classes that you've made, and it's just combining them and taking the values that you pass it as parameters. It's taking all of that and it's whittling it down into this easy to understand object of just key value pairs. Does that make sense? Is this new for anyone, or like do you feel like you kind of understood what's going on with this before?
So when you're passing objects into local storage, you have to stringify it and put it in this form. And then when you parse it on the other end, is all it doing is just reading this and creating an object and recognizing it again as such.
Yeah, so like with local storage, you're just saying like local storage.set item, right? And you're saying like you could say like owner, and Peter Guerra, right? So then in local storage, it's in its object, it's saying, okay, I'm going to create a key called owner and a value called Peter Guerra. Then it has a method called getItem that you're just saying, okay, go grab whatever has the key of owner and pass me the value that it had.
Well, I understand that, but when you try and pass an object, you get an error unless you do JSON.stringify.
Okay, I haven't worked too much with that, but if you do have that, then you can just do you can just do JSON.parse and then pass it in, and that works, and that just turns it back into this.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Do you have a question?
So what you wrote earlier, just look at the bold.
This stuff?
Those are keys, and then
Mhm.
the values are in green.
Yes. This isn't showing it, but these 2 are also keys.
Oh, okay.
Because, so this is an array of person objects. And so it's just not color coding it correctly, but those are also keys for that object.
So that attribute's always the keys then, basically?
Yeah, the attribute name is what the key is going to be. I think that's kind of important to understand with classes, is that the key is just the attribute. Okay. Does this make sense to everyone? I hope I'm not wasting your time with this, but like this is really important to understand, and I think it kind of connects like how you're extending things, but then it's all just becoming one thing. It's not like you have to go and be calling things from the building class in order to use it. It's just creating this one object from all those different classes that you used. Okay. So let me look. So we've talked a little bit about inheritance. We talked about is a, has a. In this example, obviously, house is a building. Building has an owner. House has residents. I hope you guys understand that relationship. We don't want to see anyone being like a resident extends house. That doesn't make sense. A resident like lives in a house. A house has a resident. Does that make sense? Where those kind of work. We can do the form really quick, and then I think that's all I'm going to do unless people have more questions. So we're going to do a form, kind of show how we can. We'll just do this. We'll just do this example, and we can like create everything from that. Make a new file. I'm just gonna make a new file quick. Those are just shortcuts. Yeah. So we're gonna create a form. Just give it a field set, give it a legend, and we'll say this like house something. Okay. So let's give it a label, and we're gonna say this is. So first we're just gonna create like the owner and have that be the only resident. For first name, and if you have to take off or anything, go for it. This is more of an example of how to get all this through. First name. If you press on a Mac, if you press Option Shift down, what is it on Windows? Control Shift down
To do what? Which one?
to just copy it down.
I don't know. I'll kind of just like do it. It's like
Alt down?
2 seconds.
Alt down. So we're gonna say this.
Alt shift.
Alt Shift down. First name ID equals first name. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna get the first name. Then we're gonna say, what else do we need here? We're gonna need to get the address, bedrooms, and bathrooms. So that's all we're gonna do. For address. Oh. Another thing, let's just delete this. You can type the same thing in multiple places. Oops, this is supposed to be bedrooms. Okay, so we create a little form. I could change this to numbers and everything, but it's all going to come in as a string anyway, so I don't really care right now. We're not going to do validation. And let's just say button. Type equals submit. I don't know if you need that there, but on click equals create. We're just going to say create submit. Let's have this be the index. Okay. So now we created this form. It has first name, last name, address, bathrooms, bedrooms. And if we look at this, we know that for the person we need first name and last name. For the building, we need owner, which that's what we're getting first name, last name for, and we're going to get an address. For a house, we need bedrooms and bathrooms and residents. Well, residents, we're just going to have one resident right now in our array. Okay, so we're going to create a function called create. I'm going to just comment this stuff out. So we're going to do document.forms. It's just the first form. There's no other forms. I'm just going to have const form equals that. So then I can just reference it really easily. We should be able to do, I think I named them all the same things. So const first name equals form first name. Thanks for coming, guys. Huh? Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Probably. Classes definitely will be.
Yes.
We're trying to decide exactly how we want to do it, and we kind of showed Anderson what we were thinking. He's saying he definitely wants like a lot of classes on there.
Yeah.
And we do want to put forms on there too, but then we're like trying to make it not too crazy. But
you guys have 3 hours, so.
yeah. But we also want it to be fun, so we're trying to make it really fun.
It's gonna be so fun. Okay, so we get everything from our form. Let's just make sure this is working. So this is what I do when I'm like, I get to this point, I'm like, I should probably make sure that this actually works first. And let's just like console log out first name and last name. I'm gonna say this is my index because that's where I want to go. And let's just make sure. I'm gonna open live server. Okay, it made a form. So Peter Garrow, Main Street, 3, 2. Let's open up this so that we can see what happens when we just press submit. Of course. Let me get rid of that. Submit. Never remember what to do here. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move this out. Just for easiness.
Yeah, just like.
Okay, it looks like it's getting something, right? Oh, I forgot to put dot value for everything, didn't I? Don't forget that.
That's holding Alt and clicking, right? Is that what it is on Mac?
Option.
Okay, on Windows it's Alt.
You can also do like,
What did you do?
you can like press a whole bunch all at the same time and then type in a bunch of stuff. You can also just press Alt Shift and then up, and then it like does all of it. So if everything's like in the same line like this, you can Alt Shift down, space, and then like type everything all at the same time. Also, if you do Alt or Option Delete, it'll like do chunks at a time of deleting. Okay, so I'm gonna try this one more time. This is just saying something's not right. I don't care. 2, 3, submit. Cannot read property value of undefined. Line 28. We're gonna see some debugging quick. It's because I didn't change it. S is not defined, line 33. Sorry guys, index.js. Okay, one last time, we just want to make sure this works. Bathrooms 2, 3, submit. Okay, we get no errors. It still doesn't like that I didn't capitalize building here. Okay, so now that we've gotten all our values, so now we can say, okay, well I want my owner to be a new person, just like we did before. So I'm gonna, from my form values, I'm gonna say, okay, go and create that new person. I know that my residence, that's just gonna be me, but it's gonna be array of the owner. So const owner or const residence equals an array. You can just create an array right here. Okay. And then I'm gonna say const my house equals new house. Now I can pass in the address. I can pass in my owner, my bedrooms, my bathrooms, and residence. Sorry, this is kind of quick, but now let's go ahead and console log, see what my house looks like when it comes out. Let's clear this. Peter Garrow, 23 Main Street, 2, 3. And we have basically the exact same thing that we had before when I hard-coded everything in. So now what's great is if you had a form and you wanted to go and create a whole bunch of these, like what if you press submit and it cleared it, but now you can save all of these because you just create them as the objects, and now you can refer to those objects wherever you want, as long as it's within the scope. So this is really powerful, especially when you're connected to a database. You can map these objects to your database and save them there. Yeah. Sorry, this might have been kind of quick. It might have been kind of slow, but I hope that everyone feels more confident with classes, constructors, extending, inheritance. All this. Did you have a question?
Could you put a code on Slack?
Yeah, I can put this on Slack. Any other questions?
I had a quick question. Could you just show us real quick how like you would do it, the constructor, like in how Mr. Anderson does it? Just like what is the difference between like putting it inside of like the actual constructor and outside?
So he does something like, I think he does something like this. I don't know if you need this there.
You might not even, yeah, that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah, he does something like this.
Would you then have to, like in the constructor, say this dot first name?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
So then basically it's pointless to declare them twice.
Yeah.
Constructor and outside.
That's kind of my thought. What's cool? Okay. This, when you're talking about this in a constructor, it's talking about the object that it's referring to, right? So I went and I created an owner object. So when I'm saying owner dot first name, I'm saying, and I said like equals. Sorry. Let me do this. Let me change this up. So like set first name. First name. Okay. So when I'm saying owner dot set first name, and I just pass it back in, it doesn't really matter what you pass in. When it's saying this, it's referring to the object that this method is getting called on. So it's not referring to the class. It's referring literally to this owner object, which is what's really cool about this. Is it's just a way of being able to kind of dynamically say which object you're talking about, just based on reference. That might be a bit much, but this is super important. The keyword. Any other questions or anything else you want me to go over?
Yeah, just get rid of the thing. You go to your index page, submit and type.
This one?
And then move the button.
What's the benefit of having the form tag and with the field set inside the form?
That's your fix.
Because on the test, I didn't put the form tag. I just put field set tag and it operated the same. So is it just so that you can pull it into an array of form?
Yeah.
We're just kind of doing this
Mhm.
demonstration based stuff.
If you don't have form, then you can't really get that. Another thing is
So then
like,
you have to pull everything individually.
yeah, which we're looking. It's better to use the
On a small
form.
website, it doesn't really matter, but if you're doing something big, then
It's also like on your Node Express apps that you're doing, you need to be using a form for like your buttons and things so that you can apply a method and a method and an action. So when you click on the submit or the edit or the delete, the form is what's handling it, and it's based on the method and the action that you give it. So like here, it's not like we could have just done get element by ID for everything, but this is good practice because it is a form, and so use it that way. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and I will post this stuff on Slack.